Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Sarah Balacio and I am a board certified art therapist at the Wellness Center at William & Mary. And today is our second in the Creative Arts Therapy series, the virtual series. Today we're going to be focusing on watercolor. And in a little class I like to call Veg Out. And you'll see why in a minute. So I'm going to read you our waiver first. In order to make these classes as freely accessible as possible to our participants, we'll be using a verbal warning and assumption of risk at the beginning of class. Participation in this online class is voluntary. Physical activity programs may result in injury, and by participating, you assume the risk of injury that may result from your participation. We strongly recommend that you participate from a space that's suitable for this activity. For example, make sure you've moved nearby furniture. Again, this doesn't really pertain to us. And other potential hazards. If you're participating in a yoga class or one that involves laying on the ground, we recommend using a mat, or if you don't have one, a carpeted area. Participants are encouraged to stop if they experience pain or injury and should seek appropriate medical advice or care as needed. William & Mary Health and Wellness strongly recommends that each participant have an annual physical exam and follow the advice of your healthcare provider before participating. That's our waiver. And I'm going to start with a little introduction on watercolor, but I thought it might be fun today in my class that I'm calling Veg Out to use either fruit or vegetable as kind of like our still life. And we're just really going to start by making a basic circle. And I have an example I'll show you in a minute of a radish that I've sketched, or like an apple. So super simple. You'll see it better when I get going. I just kind of sketched one to start. But what I wanted to show you was some basics about watercolor before we start. So I'm going to put the screen here so you can see this. So like we were talking about, watercolors can come in, sorry, not quite yet. They can come in a typical paint format like you would see the palette. They could come in crayons, they can come in colored pencil, they can come in marker. And they can also come in little tubes where you just use the tiniest little drop of pigment and then spread that. So there's a lot of different options, but I find that even just like the basic kind of set that you would get, remember from when you were younger, they all work, kind of the same. So main point I want to say about watercolor is a couple of things. The brushes, you might notice the watercolor brushes are softer. Okay, so they are generally not stiff like an acrylic brush or even an oil. They're a lot softer because so the water can kind of soak up into it. Okay, so you'll notice if you have just like a smattering of brushes, you don't want to use the stiff ones. You want to use the really soft type. Now, I want to show you the main things about watercolor. Some people don't like it because it gets all flowy. And in art therapy, we talk a lot about the various mediums you use. And if you're a person that's very type A and like very in control, watercolor could be a good little experiment for that. So mainly I want to show you, of course, you need water to get it going. You can't see my water cup here. But the more water you have, I hope y'all can see this. Can you give me a thumbs up if it's looking like you can see it well? Okay, good. I mostly meant my artwork. Okay, so if you have a lot of water, it's going to make the color very pale, right? So more water, paler color like this. Okay, so see how pale that is? Now, less water, I'm going to basically dry off my brush. The color is really vibrant. So this is the same color. I'm going to really dry my brush now for the last one. And you'll see just how dark it can be. Really vibrant. All the way up to this. So the more water, the paler, the less water, or just like the stronger or brighter the pigment. Now, a really fun and cool thing that I like about watercolor is that it's very, very forgiving. So say you were like, oh, I don't like that. I totally messed up. You can take your tissue or paper towel, whatever you have, and look, especially where it's really watery, it soaks it right up. Okay, and even if this darker part, if you add more water to it, you can still kind of blend stuff with the watercolor. So what I like about it is that I feel like you honestly, you can fix things pretty easily. See, like it's pretty much gone there. So what else did I want to say about watercolor? So that's pigment stuff, brushes and supplies. Type in the chat if you have other more specific questions. But what we're going to do is each think of a round fruit or vegetable to draw. And in fact, if you just want to start with a circle. I mean, that could turn into an orange, that could turn into an apple, a red apple, a green apple, a plum, whatever you want it to be. You could think about your favorite fruit or vegetable, but start on your paper with pencil and just roughly draw a circle. Let's do that part now together. Okay, so I'll show you mine. I don't know if you can see this, but you know, I want to do my radish, but it's the same idea. So I had sketched ahead of time a little radish here. It's basically a round circle too. I won't bother with the leaves right now because that's kind of a separate thing, but think of any fruit or vegetable you would like to draw. Sorry, I guess I didn't tell my participants to grab a pencil ahead of time, my bad. I'm just kind of outlining my sketch I had before. So you guys can see it on the camera. Alrighty. So start by just sketching out some kind of circle. And I'm going all out with my radish, but you can just make it whatever your comfort level is or whatever you feel like drawing. Essentially some kind of circle. I have on the other side, I had said an apple, which is a little simpler, but they're gonna look great. And today we're gonna really mostly focus on blending. So quick tip, this is like my best tip because as an art therapist, I like everyone to feel successful. Someone was talking about that at the beginning with working with the young people. My best tip is I go, because I'm not the type of person that can be like a radish and like paint a radish. So what I do, and you guys could do it there on your computer, I'll show you, I'm doing it right now on my phone. I would enter on Google like simple radish watercolor or radish watercolor. Or whatever you're sketching. Like the other day I was doing an octopus or something. And you go to images and you can see like a variety of different ones come up. So I guess my point is what I'm trying to say is Google whatever it is you're trying to draw. The other day, like I said, I had to do an octopus for something with this program I'm doing. And I entered in simple octopus drawing, go to images and look, there's like, you know, oops, can you see on, I don't know if you can see, but in any case, there's a zillion there. And so just to make your life easier to look at something in front of you, that's what I find the most helpful. So you can do it on your Zoom or you can do it on your phone near you like I'm doing, and then I'm gonna get started. But I wanna see, I'm gonna pull up an example for myself to use. So you find one that, whether it's the shape you like, the shading, the color, whatever it is. I think I'm gonna use this one. Okay, so I'm gonna start with, here's my watercolor set, I'll show you. It's a little different. I have a travel one, which is fun. Oh, sorry, important tip I also wanted to share. During the pandemic, when we don't have that many supplies, I found out that you can use, and I'll show you on the back, just a simple magic marker as a watercolor. So you'll see that I'm gonna color in here just loosely with a plain, just washable marker. And for the participant that said that they have watercolor markers, this is kind of similar to what you would do. But look, this is just a washable marker. This would be great for if you work with kiddos, like I know the other participant mentioned. And see, it's just a washable marker. And all I did was draw with the color, draw with the marker, and now I just come in and blend it. And see how simple that is? So it's a really neat tip that we found out from the pandemic because we have limited supplies. See, it's not all bad, the pandemic, right? We found this out. Trying to be positive. Okay, so now I'm going to show you, I was just trying to show you how neat that is. I love that I found that out. It makes sense to me. All right, so I'm going to get started with my radish. And what we're going to do with our circle, for those of you that are at home, and don't worry, in a moment we will turn off the recording and I can do more like in-person pointers. But you want to have the light coming from one spot. So I'm going to make mine coming in on the top. I'll make a little circle here and show you. Top, upper, right. And you guys can do the same. You could, if you want, after you draw your circle, you could draw a tiny little spot where the light's going to be coming. Do y'all see that? Let me bring it a little closer. See how I just made that light circle there? And the one thing you can't do with watercolor, you can never really take away the color. I mean, you can kind of when I showed you how to dab it, but so if something's going to be white, you just have to leave it blank. So after you draw your circular shape of whatever fruit or vegetable it is, also do that little white spot, okay? Top right, we're going to make it like the light's coming in. So my radish, I'm going to take my red, and I usually like to go around the perimeter first, and I'm going to kind of fade it darkest on the outside, going all the way light toward that white circle. So remember, darker, less water, lighter, more water. So I'm basically just using like the pigment at this point for the parameter, and I'm gonna outline it like so. Whoops. With my brush. Try to get a fine point brush. It really helps. A lot of times those sets come with brushes that are kind of thick, and it just makes your life easier. The thing that's fun about some of the other mediums we mentioned, not mediums, modalities like watercolor markers or colored pencils, you can get a lot of detail because you're kind of like sketching with it and then afterward blending. So now all I'm going to do is wet my brush. I'm not going to even put any more paint on it, you guys. I'm just going to blend with what I have here. Now, can you see how I'm just kind of like spreading it from the parameter toward that pencil mark? Now, I want to say one thing. Once you have done pencil, and if you go over it with the watercolor, you won't be able to erase it. So I'm erasing it now, that little area that I wanted to keep white. Let me just get some of these eraser marks out of there. Now, see, I made a little mistake. I like blended by accident. I brushed this. Let me show you the coolest thing. Actually, I like to keep Q-tips around too, for this is even better. I'm gonna take, see how when I kind of messed up and spread this, look, you just take your paper towel and it makes it go right away. So never fret with watercolor. All right, so I'm kind of now just blending and leaving it white in that one spot. Now I don't like how this looks right here, so I'm going to try to blend it a little more. Sometimes people use like the lid of their watercolor set and use that like as a palette. That's a great idea too. But remember to leave that one little corner or that little section white, like the light's coming. So I'm going to show you again on an apple just one more time before we turn off the recording. I'll do the same thing on this side, but my light source will be coming from the opposite since I kind of already started coloring this to show you the example with the markers. So again, take your red, whoopsies, and start with the parameter. Wow, that was basically all pigment. Start with the parameter of whatever shape. Could be even a leaf or a flower you're doing this with, but today we're doing the veg out because I thought kind of like a circle might be the most simple way to start. And anywhere you think in your mind logically where it would be darker too, like this little bit up here right by the stem, that's obviously going to be very dark. So how do I get it darker? Pigment and less water. More of the paint. You can also add a darker shade. I happen to have a brown here I could add to make it look darker there. And then so a lot of times you don't need that much paint. You then just blend with what you have on your paper. Okay, leaving that one area light because that's where the sun is going to be, or the light is going to be hitting it. Let me finish my parameter over here. Okay, And you don't want it to look like a perfect blob of light. So sometimes I'll go back in again with the tissue and just lighten this whole area. Make it look a little more natural like that. And then you can do the opposite. Go back in around the border and make some things darker. And then obviously parts that are dark, like the stem, we'll just fill in here. But what I love so much about watercolor is that unevenness to it. So let me get a little dark. The darkest part would be up here in the shadow of kind of like where the, it's a little too much, of where the divot would be before the stem comes out. So really you kind of with watercolor spread out the paint that you kind of have out already, if that makes sense. So this is my 2 examples of, and then in a minute we'll turn this off and we can interact more and have some questions. This is my veg out watercolor. Apple on one side and a radish on the other. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, and it'll be posted on our William and Mary Virtual Wellness YouTube for you to take advantage of if you weren't able to come today. So thank you, everybody. Those of you that are on the line, I'm not really going anywhere. I'm just turning off the recording. So thanks again and take care. Uh-oh. Why can't I turn off? There we go.